Hi, I'm Anne-Marie from Brambleberry.com, and today I am coming to you with a slightly different project. I'm so excited about the Brambleberry Coquette Collection, which is based on all things romantic and flirty. Think pink, think, yes, Bridgerton, think Lady Whistledown, pearls, all the things. And so we came up with our own version of a soap cake that is designed to be kind of like one of those really delightful French desserts. So in today's video, we're going to be showing layering and frosting. So yes, it's an advanced video. If you haven't learned how to make soap before, this is not the bar of soap to learn to make soap on. Go back and watch some of our early videos on how to make soap, or also you can start with some of my soap making books. And for the rest of you that have made soap, please watch this video, make this product, and put it on the socials so I can see it. I'm so excited to show you how to layer and frost. So this, I'm calling it the Brambleberry cake. This Brambleberry cake uses Parisian Pink Fragrance Oil, which is one of our 4 from our Coquette collection. And this Parisian Pink Fragrance Oil has notes of pearl, has a little bit of notes of hinoki, has some notes of jasmine and lily, and I swear, I smell just a little bit of pink peony in here. It also has some notes of magnolia and ginger lily. And our Coquette collection is designed to make you think of all things romantic and flirty. And the star of our show is our Rose Gold Mica, which is fantastic and gorgeous. It's really quite a gorgeous pink, and when you use it in kind of a light color, this is how it looks. You can get a really romantic dusty rose with it. All right, I am suited up for safety. Kids and pets are not around, and what else? Well-ventilated area. Stick blender's ready to go. My titanium dioxide is pre-measured and mixed up in some oil, and I've pre-measured out my fragrance oil. The first step of this particular recipe is to make our cake layers. And so to make our cake layers, we are going to get to a really thin trace and then separate our batch into 2 different containers. So in this case, I'm using Brambleberry's triple butter base, which does tend to trace just a little bit faster. It gets a little bit thicker, quicker, but don't you worry, you'll see how that is an advantage to us. So I am going to be scenting the entire batch now. And again, this is a fragrance that I have pre-measured out. I'm going to give it a really quick stick blend, though not much. And now I'm just going to separate out into 2 containers. And I'm using the Brambleberry Easy Pour containers because we are going to be layering, and I like to be able to layer low and slow. So fully fragranced up, and one of these containers is going to get titanium dioxide and the other isn't. And just that slight difference in color is going to be our difference in layers, which is really cool. Another thing I'm going to do to ensure I get even layers is I'm going to weigh out each layer as I am pouring it. Now, you could, of course, separate this into 6 different containers. I'm going to avoid doing that by just weighing things out. And here is my titanium dioxide. I'm going to put it into my batch of soap and get it all in there. And I'm going to give it a really quick stick blend, though not very much. The thing that I noticed with this beautiful fragrance oil, Parisian Pink, is that it tends to get the soap batter kind of nice and thick, but it doesn't ever get so thick you can't work with it. Now I have my 2 colors here, my white and my uncolored. I'm going to take my scale, turn it on, and now what I'm going to do is just do 8-ounce pours each time. So going to start with my not colored soap base first and pour slowly and gently across the entire batch. And when you're working with such a thin trace, you might notice that your soap is going grainy. That's why you have your whisk. You're going to want to be able to whisk right away. And so I'm going to take my whisk, just going to whisk it in here, get that soap to get ungrainy. And now it's time for the titanium dioxide layer. So I'm going to even this out just a little and do a little tiny shaky shake there to get this workable. And now I'm going to be pouring directly over my spatula because that will help with any breakthrough with the layers. And I know this is looking like it might be a little thick. I made this recipe, I think 4 times last week in preparation for you. This is what it did each and every time, and it worked out perfectly. So now I'm just going to smooth this out. And now it's time to do another 8 ounces of our layer. So we hit tare, and I'm going to grab the same exact spatula, just clean it off, and do another 8 ounces. So we're just going to keep repeating this, and this, I know it looks like it's thick. It is thick, but it just keeps going on. Part of it is the triple butter. You know, with that mango butter, that shea butter, and that cocoa butter, that triple butter really does like to get harder fast, right? Because think about how mango, cocoa, and shea are in kind of in their natural state, right? They are actually solid at room temperature. So they do tend to like to solidify up. So now I'm just making sure that this is nicely even. And then I'm going to take this, tap it on here, counter, get an even mix, tear this out, give this a quick whisk to make sure it's workable. And I have my sodium lactate in my lye water earlier. So if you're thinking to yourself, is the sodium lactate there? Like, I always am worried about that when I'm midway through my soaping. It is indeed there. Now I'm just pouring low and slow, although I probably don't need to be using this anymore because this is so nice and thick. Each layer is setting up beautifully. We have 1 more layer to do of each. I'm just going to carefully get this all the way over. Gosh, it looks so beautiful. I love this texture. And you know, the triple butter is one that I tend not to soap with as much. I usually go for the Brambleberry Quick Mix. That's the swirl mix because I really love the long time I get working with the swirl mix. But this one is so luxurious, I couldn't not do it for this time. Brambleberry actually has quite a few different quick mixes. They are designed to save you, the soap maker, time. They're predetermined oil percentages that come together to make a really good luxury bar, swirl bar, basic bar. So that way you don't have to do any of the thinking to create your own recipe if you don't want to, or you don't have to do the measuring to create your own recipe. So it's a real time saver. And if you're a new soaper and you're a little unsure, like, what makes the best mix of oils and butters, that is actually a really good way to shortcut that. So that was the very last of our uncolored, and now we just have the titanium dioxide. I'm just smoothing that out. See, it's nice and thick, but it's still quite workable. And after I'm done smoothing this out and tapping it, we'll do that last layer, and then I'm going to put this whole thing onto a heat pad because I'm going to want this to go through a full gel phase. Do this. And we should have almost exactly 8 ounces here. So now you can see we're pretty thick, which is just fine. I'm going to smooth this out, and then we'll be ready to go. And then I'm going to show you how to make soap frosting. Soap frosting is really fun to make, and it gives you the ability to pipe designs, which is easier than it looks. So one last little smooth, and then we're done. So making soap frosting is a combination of choosing the right oils and also just having some patience. So we're going to make this batch like a regular batch of soap. In the past, when I've made soap frosting, I've done everything from using completely cold oils that were like seriously solid at room temperature to doing this concept, which is using the triple butter quick mix and then just letting this sit for 10 to 20 minutes, and then it turns into a really great frosting consistency. You want to make your frosting after your first part of your soap. Remember, the part you're going to frost is actually ready to frost. So keep that in mind when you're planning this project out. It's really about 3 to 5 days in making soap, waiting, and then making frosting. Let's get started. First things first, I have my fragrance oil weighed out. I have my colorant already weighed out and also dispersed in my oils. And now I'm going to pour slowly down the stick blender with my lye water that has sodium lactate in it. And then just get this to a nice kind of thick trace. You can get to thick because that's what we want for frosting. Okay. So now I've got a really nice trace, and I'm just going to add my fragrance oil. With this Parisian Pink Fragrance Oil, it's so interesting how different fragrance oils act in soap. When I add this to my soap, it makes it kind of almost, you can see little white faint trailings. Not a problem. I just stick blend them in or hand stir them in depending on how thick your batch is and kind of what your design needs are. Now that my fragrance is fully stick blended in, I'm gonna go ahead and add my colorant. And again, this is Rose Gold Mica, and I've put it in a little bit of lightweight oil. In this case, it's just a little bit of sweet almond oil. I'm gonna stick blend that in so it gets in really evenly. And it's just a beautiful romantic pink. And we're getting a little bit thick now, which is great because that's what we want for frosting. Perfect. So now, since I am soaping with no children and no pets around, I can just set this off to the side and go do something else for 10 to 25 minutes until this becomes a good frosting consistency. I'm gonna set my timer so that way you know exactly how long I waited. Now, keeping in mind, of course, that your situation with your humidity, your temperature, all of that's gonna change. It might end up being a little bit different, but at least that way I can say exactly how long I waited to make my frosting work. So this is our cake batch. So this is what got made a couple of days ago. There's sodium lactate in the batch, so it's pretty easy to release, and you are just gonna pop it out of the mold. Then, this is pretty important, you're gonna want to put some parchment paper down. You could use wax paper. I like parchment paper because I find that the soap doesn't stick to it quite as much. So for this particular cake design, you might remember we have frosting on the top and frosting on the sides. So we do that before we do our piping. So you want your frosting to be just a little bit workable, not quite thick enough that you're gonna need to maintain those peaks. So really be kind of paying attention to how thick your frosting is. And now I'm just gonna start glopping. And this is not a very glamorous kind of procedure. It's a glop and frost situation. So that's one of the reasons we have the parchment paper down, because once you get your piping on and your frosting on, if you don't use this parchment paper or this wax paper or freezer paper, your soap will be glued to your cutting board or your surface, whatever you're working with. So just keep that in mind. And this is a kind of messy process. Don't worry. You will be piping over the kind of mess that's on the sides. We just want to get a good coverage so that way we have our frosting layer done here, and then we're going to start the piping. All right, piping here, I'm just going to do this one, and this one's sticking a little bit more, so I'm just going to do some piping so you can kind of see the concept. I'm not going to make you watch my entire piping process, but you're just piping down the sides of the soap, and then you're going to pipe down along the sides here, and then you're going to let this sit for 1 to 3 days before cutting. All right, now it's time to cut the soap. So this was frosted 3 or 4 days ago, and then the base was made 7 or 8 days ago, and we're about a week out. I am using a non-serrated knife, and I'm just going to cut in between the frosting as much as I can. This first one's gonna be a little bit big, a little bit ungainly, a little bit odd. And yes, when you're thinking to yourself, well, how am I going to use that? How would anybody use that? That is a great question, because these, you're right, these just kind of come off the first time you use them in the shower, but they sure are pretty. If that doesn't look like the perfect dessert, I don't know what does. So now it's just a matter of figuring out how kind of wide to cut these. And every bar is going to be different unless you, as the soap maker, are cutting on either a grid pattern or you've already scored your soap kind of to show like, okay, we're gonna cut here, 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 and here. And that really matters, of course, for when you're selling your products, right? You have to have truth in labeling. So you always need to make sure that your labels accurately reflect how much weight is in the bar of soap you're selling. So now these soaps need to sit and harden for 4 to 6 weeks before they are fully dried and before you want to be able to give them away or sell them. And if you like this video, be sure and give it a thumbs up below. If you make this, oh my goodness, I want to hear about it. I want to hear what your thoughts are about this soap in the comments. And when you're making your products, make sure to hashtag them Bramble on Threads, on Instagram, Pinterest, all the places. We love to see what you're creating with our products. And until next time, everyone, happy soaping.